Everyone in Red Hollow agreed on one thing. If a Mercer ever loved a Reyes, someone would pay for it. No one remembered who started the rule. No one questioned why it existed. They just obeyed it. Because the last time it was broken, a man disappeared, a woman left town bleeding in silence, and a child was erased from every family record. That was 30 years ago, and this time, history was about to repeat itself. I want you to imagine a town where the wind carries names people refuse to say, where fences don't just divide land, they divide blood, where love isn't romantic, it's dangerous. Because the moment Caleb Mercer looked across the dusty street and met Elena Reyes's eyes, every lie Red Hollow was built on began to crack. They didn't touch, they didn't speak, but the town noticed, and that was enough to set fate in motion. They warned them long before love ever found a name between them. Not with violence, not with threats, but with silence. The kind of silence that says, "This has happened before, and it nearly destroyed us." Still, fate has never cared much for permission, because the land remembers everything. Every promise whispered into the wind, every betrayal buried beneath dust and time, every love that was never allowed to finish its sentence. And out there where the horizon stretches too wide for secrets to hide, two lives were never meant to cross. Yet fate kept pulling them together. Red Hollow sat between open plains and broken mountains, a town shaped by wind, drought, and stubborn men who mistook endurance for virtue. People stayed because leaving meant admitting failure, and when they left, they rarely came back. The land didn't forgive easily. Caleb Mercer. Caleb had grown into responsibility the way boys in Red Hollow always did too early, too quietly. His grandfather carved the ranch out of dust and bone. His father defended it through lawsuits, drought, and whispered scandals. Caleb inherited the weight of both. He rose before the sun, worked until his hands ached, spoke little, observed much. He had learned that love was dangerous not because it hurt, but because it distracted, and distractions had ruined men before. Elena Reyes. Elena returned because the past finally demanded it. Her mother died in a small apartment far from Red Hollow, leaving behind unanswered questions and one final request: sell the house, close the chapter. The Reyes home still stood at the edge of town, leaning slightly, as if exhausted from holding history alone. Elena hadn't been back in 12 years. She didn't expect welcome. But she didn't expect the way the town looked at her as if she were a memory they'd failed to erase. Caleb first saw Elena outside the general store. She stood near the notice board, reading outdated postings as if they might explain why she felt out of place. He noticed her stillness, not fear but awareness. When she lifted her head and met his eyes, something shifted. Not attraction, not desire. Recognition. A quiet sense of "this matters." Caleb felt the weight of it immediately, in the eyes of the town. Warnings came swiftly. That evening, Caleb's father spoke while cleaning his rifle. "You keep clear of the Reyes girl," he said. "Nothing good ever came from that name." Caleb nodded. He always did. Across town, Elena's aunt warned her just as quietly. "Mercers don't love," she said. "They claim." No stories followed, just lines drawn deep into the dirt. Avoidance failed. Red Hollow was too small. They saw each other near the fence line where Mercer land met abandoned Reyes property. Near the creek, at dusk when the sky softened and the town loosened its grip. Their first conversation was cautious, polite, unremarkable. But beneath every word was tension. When Elena asked, "Why does everyone act like we're dangerous?" Caleb didn't answer, because he didn't know the full truth. Only that something old was stirring. Their hands brushed against the fence. Neither moved away. That was enough to change everything. They didn't rush. This wasn't reckless love. It was careful, measured, heavy with awareness. They spoke in half-truths, shared silences instead of promises. Caleb showed Elena the land at dusk. Elena told Caleb about the years she spent running from questions. They never crossed certain lines, because both felt the cost waiting beyond them. Still, love does not need permission to grow. Rumors surfaced. Old eyes sharpened. The town moved faster than the heart. Caleb was sent north with cattle and obligation disguised as opportunity. Elena was reminded daily that Red Hollow did not forgive easily. They didn't say goodbye. Goodbyes make things real. Miles apart, they try to live lives expected of them. Caleb dated a woman chosen for stability. Elena rebuilt the old house, brick by brick. Both were told the same lie. The other moved on, and both believed it, because hope hurts more than certainty. Truth does not stay buried forever. Elena found it first hidden behind a false wall. Letters, a ledger, a child's name crossed out too carefully. Years ago, a mercer loved Arias. That love ended in fear. A child was sent away, a scandal buried, a feud born from shame, not hatred. Caleb learned later from his dying father. We were afraid, he confessed, afraid love would expose what we buried. When Caleb returned, older and quieter, Elena was still there, waiting without knowing she was. Their reunion was restrained. Truth spilled slowly, painfully. Elena whispered, "They stole years from us." Caleb didn't argue. Choosing each other meant tearing open old wounds, facing a town that preferred silence, risking land, family, legacy. Walking away meant carrying regret forever. Under a sky crowded with stars, they stood where everything began. No promises, just truth. Two people choosing truth even if it comes too late. And Red Hollow, for the first time in decades, could no longer pretend it didn't remember. The land did not welcome the truth. It resisted it. Red Hollow had survived droughts, fires, and bloodshed, but it had never survived honesty. Because honesty threatens everything built on silence. And the moment the truth began to surface about the Mercers, about the Reyes, about the child no one claimed, the town shifted. Not loudly, quietly, like a hand closing around a weapon without drawing it yet. Caleb and Elena did not announce their reunion. They understood the danger. Instead, they met in places where the land was wide and witnesses were few. At the creek, just before dawn. At the old fence line, where no one bothered to repair what had broken long ago. Their conversations were careful, but their silences were not. Love had changed. It was no longer tentative. It was urgent. Still restrained, but heavier now. Because they both understood the cost. Caleb noticed the way people watched him. Elena felt the weight of old resentment sharpen. Red Hollow was paying attention. The first warning did not come from family. It came from a stranger. A man Elena didn't recognize waited outside the old Reyes house one evening. He didn't threaten her. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "Some things stay buried for a reason," and left. That night, Caleb found a fence post torn down near the property line. Not vandalism, a message. Elena returned to the letters she'd found. She read them slowly this time, not as history, but as evidence. The child mentioned in the ledger hadn't disappeared. He'd been sent away, raised under another name. And one detail stood out, a payment recorded every year for decades. Someone in Red Hollow had been making sure the secret stayed quiet. Caleb followed the trail. It led somewhere he hadn't expected. A man who worked the far edge of Mercer land. A man whose eyes looked familiar in a way that made Caleb uneasy. The man's name was Thomas Hale. He was quiet, kept to himself, but his age was right, and his story didn't add up. When Caleb finally asked the question no one else ever had, Thomas didn't deny it. He only said, "They told me my mother didn't want me." The truth landed like a gunshot. The child hadn't been erased. He had been kept close, hidden in plain sight. Once suspicion surfaced, Red Hollow reacted. Business deals stalled. Old debts were called in. Caleb's land was challenged legally, documents questioned, borders disputed. Elena's house was vandalized, not destroyed, just enough to intimidate. Someone wanted her gone. The message was clear. Stop digging. Caleb tried to protect Elena by pulling away. Distance felt like safety. Elena refused it. "We don't survive this by pretending again," she said. They argued, quietly, desperately, because love under threat reveals fear, and fear makes people cruel. They said things they didn't mean, but neither left. Caleb's father died before the town could silence him again, but not before leaving something behind, a recorded confession. Not meant to be public, meant to be understood. He admitted everything, the affair, the child, the lies, and the decision to protect reputation over life. "I thought I was saving us," he said. "I was just prolonging the damage." Before Caleb and Elena could decide what to do with the truth, the tape disappeared, and Thomas Hale vanished. This time it wasn't rumor. There were signs of struggle. The land gave back what it always does: silence. Red Hollow closed ranks. The message was unmistakable. Some truths are paid for in blood. Caleb faced a choice no one should have to make: expose everything, risking Elena's life, his land, and his future, or bury the truth again, this time by choice. Elena refused to decide for him, but she knew what the town was capable of. They met one last time at the fence line, the place where everything began. They didn't cry. They didn't promise. They spoke honestly, because sometimes love is not about staying, it's about protecting. Caleb kissed her once, not desperately, intentionally, and walked away. Red Hollow never spoke of what happened next. Some say the truth was never revealed. Others say it was, quietly, legally, painfully. Thomas Hale was never found, but the town changed, subtly. Fear crept in where certainty once lived, and Elena left, not running, choosing. Years later, when the fence finally collapsed completely, no one rebuilt it, because the land remembered, and so did love. Redemption does not come like justice. It does not arrive with raised voices or public apologies. It does not demand witnesses. It arrives quietly when someone chooses to stop running from what they already know is right. In Red Hollow, redemption arrived slowly, like rain that had been withheld for generations. Elena Reyes left Red Hollow before dawn, not because she was afraid, because staying would have turned love into a hostage. She didn't take much, only what could fit in the back of her truck and the truth she refused to abandon. Caleb Mercer watched the dust rise behind her until it settled back into the land. He did not follow. Love sometimes is not pursuit, it is endurance. Caleb stayed in Red Hollow, alone. Not isolated, but exposed. The land felt different now, not hostile, expectant. He worked harder than ever, not to distract himself, but to anchor himself. At night he replayed everything, every silence, every choice made by men who thought they were protecting something. What they had protected was fear, and fear, he realized, was the most expensive inheritance of all. It started small. A woman at the diner asked a question she'd never asked before. Did Thomas Hale ever have family? No one answered, but no one shut her down either. Then a man admitted, quietly, that he remembered seeing a mercer deliver money once a year to the edge of town. Memory returned like breath after drowning, slow, painful, necessary. The truth had not vanished. It had been hidden. Caleb found it where no one thought to look, inside a church ledger no one had opened in decades. The recording his father left had been copied once by a man who believed the truth belonged to God more than men. Caleb listened to it again. This time he did not hear shame. He heard accountability. Caleb did not expose the truth all at once. That would have been violence. Instead, he told it person by person, not accusing, not pleading, simply stating facts. The affair, the child, the payments, the disappearance. Some denied it, some cried, some walked away, but no one could unhear it. Red Hollow had a choice. It always had. Protect the lie or accept responsibility. The town council met in private, then in public. For the first time in decades, silence was no longer enough. A vote was taken. The Mercer land would not be taken. The Reyes name would be restored. Thomas Hale would be acknowledged officially as family, not erased, recognized. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was truth. Elena returned weeks later, not because she was called, because she felt it. The town didn't greet her warmly, but it didn't look away either. Caleb stood near the old fence line when she found him. No apologies, no speeches, just presence. Elena said, "You stayed." Caleb replied, "So did the truth." Their love was different now, not cautious, not urgent, grounded. They walked the land together openly. They spoke without watching who might hear. For the first time, their love was not rebellion, it was belonging. Redemption came with one last cost. Thomas Hale was never found, but a letter arrived, written months earlier. He had left willingly. "I didn't want to be another thing you fought over," he wrote. "I just wanted the truth to exist." And now it did. The fence was never rebuilt. No one asked for it to be. Children crossed freely where lines once stood rigid. The land breathed easier. So did the people. Some love stories don't end in passion. They end in peace, in truth spoken without fear, in silence that no longer wounds. Caleb and Elena did not escape the past. They faced it. And in doing so, they gave Red Hollow something it had never had before, a future not built on forgetting. Before you leave, I want to ask you something. Have you ever loved someone you were told not to love? Not because it was wrong, but because it made other people uncomfortable. Have you ever stayed silent to protect peace, only to realize later that the silence cost you more than the truth ever would? If you had been Caleb, would you have stayed and fought for the truth, knowing it could destroy everything you built? Or would you have walked away with Elena, choosing love over legacy, even if it meant losing the only place you'd ever known as home? And here's the hardest question of all. Is there someone in your life right now who deserves honesty from you, but hasn't received it yet? Sit with that. If this story touched something real inside you, I invite you gently to share your thoughts in the comments. There are no right answers here, only honest ones. Some stories stay with you because they remind you that love isn't just something you feel, it's something you choose. If this story meant something to you, if it stirred memory, hope, or courage, kindly like this video and subscribe, because the next story is already waiting for you, and this time you won't walk it alone.